welcome to the Ethereum Engineering Group meetup. Hello for 2019. So today we're going to hear Brad President, who's going to do a technical introduction to blockchain. And
Thank you, Peter. First of all, can everyone hear me? Can anyone not hear me? Anyone? Okay, so if I think we've just turned off the music, so is that a bit better now? So if I hold the microphone a little closer, that'll be fine. Okay, well, as Peter did say, Grant Knowles is my name, and I work with the Pegasus group within the company called Consensus. The microphone's not working properly, so that's right. So, without further ado, today's presentation is meant to be a non-technical introduction to blockchain. And I guess, first of all, I have to apologize with that very first statement. I lied to you. I'm sorry, but it's unfortunately, it's almost impossible to have a discussion about blockchain without introducing some concepts, some technical concepts with regards to blockchain. So I will endeavor to keep those technical discussions as basic and as simple as possible. And indeed, if you have any questions along the way, please let me know. Just raise your hand. Let's make this discussion as interactive as possible. And then, having said that, if you still want to have a few questions afterwards, after the presentation, let's have a discussion after. Okay? So I am going to make a quick change. I'll make a quick change to that title and then change it to a mostly non-technical introduction to blockchain. So let's a very brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today. First of all, I want to discuss what is blockchain. And there's a lot of varying opinions about what blockchain is. Talk about how blockchain works. Talk about some of the underlying technology behind blockchain, and this is where we'll get into some of the more, some of the technical aspects of blockchain. And then finally, we'll finish off with some of the industries that are being impacted now with blockchain. But before we start, let me ask you a question. What do people here know about blockchain? Can I ask you, sir? What do you know about blockchain?
So it's set of blocks linked together, and as far as I know, it's like information is stored inside the blocks.
Okay.
It's a safe way.
Yeah, certainly. Anyone else like to offer up what they think about their understanding of blockchain? Sir? Yes.
Distributed ledger.
Distributed ledger. Okay, that's another term that is often used in conjunction with blockchain. Let me ask a question. Does anybody have no idea what blockchain is whatsoever, and you're here to understand or try to learn a little bit about blockchain? And I see a couple of great people putting their hand up, and that's great. You're in the right spot, so hopefully we'll give you a little idea of what blockchain is all about. So blockchain certainly does mean a lot of different things to different people, and it ranges from what? We really don't understand what blockchain is. You might have heard a little bit about it on TV. You might have perhaps done some research on your own to try and find out what it's all about, but again, you're still a little bit unsure. And you may also have heard, oh yeah, that's just Bitcoin. And as soon as the word Bitcoin comes out, people say, oh well, okay, illegal weapons, drugs, corrupt governments, and so on and so forth. But it's so much more than that. First of all, blockchain is not just Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin is a blockchain application, but there are other applications out in the marketplace, Ethereum being one of them. So you can really sort of think of blockchain as the underlying technology to Bitcoin and all the other blockchain applications. For those of us old enough to remember when Al Gore made his famous statement about the internet, he was saying that it's the information superhighway. And you know what? People just, oh yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Unfortunately, with regards to blockchain, it's not quite that simple. There's a little bit more additional information that we have to explain when we're talking about blockchain. And depending on who you are, whether you're a developer or perhaps a business person, blockchain will mean different things to you. So if you're a developer, and a lot of my colleagues are here today, developing suites of applications, it's being able to use the technology to develop new applications, to do new things. Business and finance people, they see it as a whole new way of doing business. Technologists and the researchers, they see it as the engine, if you like, of the next generation of the internet. And let's face it, for perhaps some of the more radically or idealistically inclined, they see it as a way of reshaping economies and reshaping our society to a more decentralized future. So depending on what sort of person you are, you'll see blockchain for different things. So let's talk about what blockchain can actually do. Blockchain brings together existing technologies, and that's an important point. It's not a new technology as such, but it's just bringing together existing technologies, combining them in different ways. And we use blockchain to record anything of value. So by that, those could be financial transactions, those could be medical records. It could be land title information. It could be supply chain information. There's a whole raft of different applications that we could use blockchain for. Now, you may be asking the question, well, hang on, haven't we got systems in place that allow us to do this already? Well, yes, we do, but blockchain does some things that are fundamentally different. And the first way is the way that the data is stored. So, as this gentleman rightly pointed out, information is stored in batches, which we call blocks. Those blocks are then linked in chronological order to form a chain, hence the term blockchain, or as my wife calls it, chain block. Whenever we need to make an update to the data, we don't go back into the blockchain and make the changes inside an existing block of data, but instead we add a new chain, a new block to the chain, which records the update to that data. So in the same way, and I think you, sir, you were talking about a general ledger, in the same way that a general ledger tracks financial transactions over time, blockchain does exactly the same thing. It's a non-destructive way to track data changes over time. So let's look at an example. Let's look at a land title registry example. If we were to go to the land registry office here in Brisbane, we could probably find a whole archive room full of general ledger books that would track land ownership over time. For example, William purchases property back in the 1800s. He then on-sells that to his son, who then on-sells it to someone else, and then finally, right up to present day, that ledger shows Susan to be the present owner of that plot of land. So each change of ownership, we don't go back and erase an entry in the ledger and then put a new entry in. Each change of ownership is recorded as a new entry in that ledger. So in exactly the same way with blockchain. Over time, that those ledger books, if you like, are then computerized. But they're still held in a central location. Over the years, we have one central database to record this information. Blockchain by design is different in that it is decentralized. We don't have one copy of that ledger, we now have multiple copies of the ledger, and they are distributed across a network of computers. And because this information is distributed, exactly the same copy of that ledger is distributed across multiple computers, the data is very hard to tamper. So, the next thing that's different about blockchain is the trust in the data. In traditional systems, when we have a central repository or owner of the data, we put our trust in that owner of the data, or the holder of that information, to keep that information secret. However, with blockchain, there's no one centralized owner of that data. So how do we trust it? Before a block can be added to the chain, so we have a new block of data and we want to add it to the chain, all the participants in that blockchain network must agree that this block is valid and that it indeed should be added to the blockchain. Okay? And this is a process that we call consensus. Now, different blockchains have different consensus mechanisms, okay? But be that as it may, they all do the same things, that they all have some sort of process involved so that all the participants can agree that this is a valid block of data and it needs to be added to the chain. Okay, make sense? Once consensus is reached amongst all the participants, trust is ensured. Because everyone in the blockchain has agreed that this data should be added, everyone agrees that the data should be added, and we can trust it. Okay. So that brings up this idea of intermediaries that we have in our traditional system. In a traditional business or finance application, we don't necessarily show our records to one another. So if I'm doing a BPay transaction for a computer I want to buy online, I don't necessarily have to show Apple that I have the funds available in my bank account to pay for that computer. Okay. I trust that my bank holds that information for me securely, privately, and that I can then transfer my money to Apple, and then Apple will eventually send me a computer. So all of these intermediaries, we rely on them, we trust them to hold our information private. The banks, the lawyers, the credit card companies, government agencies, and so forth. Okay? We trust that they'll keep our information secure and confidential. And we trust that they will then verify the information between the transacting parties. They would verify that Susan is indeed an owner of a particular piece of property, or that I, for example, have sufficient funds in my bank account to make a bank transfer. So this service that is provided by these intermediaries actually comes at a cost. It costs time and it costs money. To give you a personal example, my daughter was working in Canada last year, and we had to, of course, send her some money. We did a bank transfer. My bank charged me, I think, $20 as a fee. The receiving bank in Canada also charged a fee to accept the money, which I thought that was pretty harsh. And the exchange rate was absolutely abysmal. and the transaction took about 5 days. So there is a cost of time and money for these sorts of traditional type of transactions. With blockchain effectively cuts out these intermediaries. Because the information and the transactions that are contained within the blockchain are readily available to all the participants in the blockchain, and we trust that information in the blockchain, we don't need these trusted intermediaries anymore. If there's a dispute, for example, if the information is on blockchain, we can readily prove that Susan, for example, is the owner of that particular piece of property. We don't need to get lawyers involved. So by cutting out these intermediaries, it cuts out the costs as well. Transactions that might have taken days to complete now could take minutes, and instead of dollars in terms of a cost, it might be a number of cents. Okay. That sort of gives us a broad overview of blockchain in and of itself. Does anybody have any questions so far? I just want to just sort of pause here, just if anybody has any questions, otherwise we'll move on to some of the more technical stuff. Yes?
Examples where the consensus was overrun or something had gone wrong with blockchain?
Oh, I'm sure that there are plenty of instances where things might have gone wrong, but I believe that there are, depending on which blockchain you're looking at, there are mechanisms in place that will allow those problems to be overcome, and different consensus mechanisms will have different. They may need a certain percentage of participants in order to agree, and if they don't reach that level of consent, that level of agreement, then that block is then rejected.
So what would be most likely to sabotage the system then? That people decide that they're all going to agree against, or like what would be the thing that would sabotage it?
I would say probably one of the most, you may have what they call bad actors in a scenario. You may have a number of participants who are not acting in the best interest of that blockchain, in that blockchain network, which might try to sabotage. Okay? That might be one scenario. Perhaps some of my other colleagues might be able to.
For some of the smaller blockchain systems, which have what's called lower hashing power, they've been, say, attacked. But say the larger systems such as Bitcoin and Ethereum essentially are all good. They've got their networks are secure.
Yes, sir.
Oh, just last week, talking about Canada, a young 30-year-old suddenly died in India.
Yes.
And it seems that they can't retrieve the $270 million.
I
And that there's 1,000 ledgers, so that one
I read that as well.
week is gone.
Can I maybe come back to that question when we come to the next section when we're talking about some of the technology? Because I think that might answer your question.
I believe the lady behind Rob Coop there had a question.
Yes. Well, and I think that's just
Paraphrase the question.
the question was talking about human error. If the information is incorrect in the first place, how do we then verify that once the information gets into the blockchain? Is that okay? Well, again, I think the matter of this idea of consensus, where a number of the participants have to agree that the data is valid, and then it can then be added to the blockchain. So I think that level of consensus will mitigate some of that information. And I think also, again, there's nothing to stop. If there is some invalid data that is in the blockchain, again, another entry could be added to the blockchain, which would then correct that information. Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, you had a question.
I was just going to state that all the blockchains are still technology evolving, so there's bugs and so on. So there's been Ethereum contract issues. Monero had a unique one where you repeated the wallet address twice and you got credited twice and only debited once. Right, so it's not foolproof yet.
Yes. And that
It's
is,
open source, so viewable for people to look at.
yeah, and that is a very, very good point. This technology is very new, so we are indeed sort of working these things out to figure out this. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what I'm going to do is I might move on to the next part of the presentation, which talks about some of the technology. And specifically, I want to talk about some of the cryptography involved. Now, don't run out of the room screaming, please. I'll try and keep it as basic as possible. But basically, there are three areas that we use cryptography within blockchain. The first is to link the blocks together, so that my previous discussion when I was talking about blocks are linked, we use some degree of cryptography to actually link the blocks together. In the consensus mechanisms that I was talking about, there's some degree of cryptography involved in that. And also, we have this concept of asymmetric keys that we use for data protection and for authentication. And sir, the question that you were asking, I'll come to an example.
Apparently Don asked for it.
Yeah, I'll come back to that, because that's a really interesting case. So first of all, let's look at how blocks are linked together in the chain. And we have this concept of a hash, or a data hash. And a hash, all a hash is, it's a unique digest that is 32 bytes long of any amount of data you can think of. Right? It's unique, and any time that you change the data of that hash, you will come up with a completely new hash for that data. So to give you an example, if we were to take the complete works of War and Peace, we could digest that down to a unique 32-byte digest of information. And then, if we were to take one single comma and change it to a semicolon in that piece of data, you would get a completely new and unique hash. Does that make sense? So that's a fairly important concept, because we use that concept in the linking of our blocks, where each block is linked using the hash of the preceding block. So in our example here, looking at block 28, it has a hash, and it also contains a hash of the preceding block, and that creates the link. So we can always trace our way back through the different blocks in the blockchain. Does that make sense? Such that if we were then to change some of the data, perhaps the data was somehow changed, perhaps it was tampered with, in the middle of the block, it completely invalidates the chain. Because all of a sudden now we have a new hash for block 27, which has been changed, and it no longer matches with the hash of the preceding block in block 28. So effectively it cuts the chain, if you like. Right? Does that make sense? Any questions on that? No? Okay. So that's the first part, how blocks are linked. The second part that cryptography is used is in the consensus mechanism. So So remember, the consensus mechanism is where the participants in the blockchain network agree that a block is valid and can be added to the chain. Well, for example, there is a mechanism called proof of work. And like I said, there are different consensus mechanisms, but I'm going to pick on this one. It also uses cryptography. In this proof of work consensus mechanism, the blockchain participants, they need to solve a puzzle. It's a cryptographic puzzle. It's a puzzle. It's whoever solves this puzzle first, they win a reward first of all, but then they're allowed to then submit that block onto the chain. That puzzle is hard to solve, so it takes a lot of computing power. It takes generally a lot of time. But it's very easy, once it is solved, it's very easy to present to all the participants in the network, and they can look at it and verify it very quickly, very easily, and say, yeah, that's correct, you win, and you get the reward, and you get to put the block on the chain. So that's the second area that blockchain uses cryptography, is in the consensus mechanisms. And the third way I want to discuss cryptography is to do with asymmetric keys. And we use asymmetric keys for two things. Well, I'll come back to that, sorry. Asymmetric key cryptography, we also call it public key cryptography, where entities like people, companies, businesses, organizations, they have a pair of cryptographic keys. One of those keys is private, and one of those keys is public. So the public key is published freely, it's published out, anyone can access it, it's public, hence the term public. The other one is private, and as that name suggests, it needs to be kept as a secret. And sir, if I can get back to your point, what happened with this gentleman who passed away, he had his private key. Things were protected using the private key. When he passed away, nobody knew what the private key was, all the data is locked.
Some people are suggesting it's fake news.
Absolutely, that's possible, I don't know. But that's what would happen. So the thing about the public and private key is that they are a matched pair. Okay? If you encrypt some data using the public key, it has to be decrypted using the private key, and vice versa. So if you think of a house, you lock your house with one key, it can only be opened up with the corresponding other key. If you try and open it up with the same key you locked it with, it doesn't work. Does that make sense? Okay, and we use this asymmetric key cryptography to protect data and also to authenticate data. And I'll explain what we mean by that. Here's an example which Peter will know very, very well, because I've stolen it from Peter. For data protection, for example, we have Alice who wants to send a message to Bob. She wants it a secret. She doesn't want anyone else to know. So Alice goes out and finds Bob's public key. It's freely available to anyone. And she encrypts her message using Bob's public key. Now, the only person that can then decrypt that message is Bob, because Bob is the holder of that one and only private key. So that's what we're talking about in terms of data protection. We can reverse that. So instead of data protection now, we can now provide authentication using those two keys. This time, Alice wants to send the message to Bob. She doesn't care if it's a secret or not, but she just wants to make sure that Bob knows that the message came from her and not from anyone else. So this time, Alice uses her private key. If she's the holder of her private key, encrypts the message, or as we call it, signs the message, sends it to Bob. Bob then can use Alice's public key to decrypt the message, and then consequently, he knows that the message must have come from Alice. Yes, sir?
Use combination, right?
Yes, you could. And I'm actually a little bit different, but in my next example, I think it might become clear. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. One little problem with this scenario, however, when those messages get really, really big, using public keys and private keys is quite inefficient. It takes a long time. If we want to send messages quickly, public keys, private keys don't work as well. So there's one way that we get around that is that we combine hashes. Remember these hashes that I was talking about before with asymmetric key sign. So let me run through another example. Alice wants to send a message to Bob. And again, remember, she doesn't want it to be a secret. She just wants to authenticate that I am the sender of this message. This is Alice. So what she does first, she creates a hash for that message. Now the benefit of that is it digests it down to 32 bytes. Okay, so it's a relatively small message now. Using her private key, she signs the message or encrypts the message using her private key. She then sends both of those, both the original message plus the encrypted hash of that message, sends it to Bob. So now Bob has two pieces of information. He can verify the hash to get the original hash of the message. And then he can create his own hash of the message. And then, finally, stay with me here, he can compare those two hashes. And if those two hashes are the same, he's then confident that the message wasn't somehow messed around in transit, and he's also confident that the message came from Alice. Okay, so that's the end of the technology, I promise. Any questions about some of that? Okay, either I've lost you completely or I've explained it really, really well. Let's finish off and talk about some of the industries that are using blockchain now. You think that the banks and the finance industry would be running away from blockchain screaming, thinking, it's going to take away all the business and these sorts of things. But the banking industry really do see blockchain as a way of revolutionizing the way they do business. They certainly have been having some bad press in the last couple of days, but from that point of view, they see blockchain as a really great way of improving their operations, interbank transfers, blockchain networks between consortiums of banks, and so on and so forth. So it really is a big industry for the banks. Companies like JP Morgan Chase in the United States, Banco Santander in Europe, and I would be very, very surprised if all the major banks here in Australia are not looking very, very seriously at blockchain. Outside of the banking industry, certainly blockchain applications are a way to offer financial services to the people in the world that really don't have access to traditional banking services. So, banking and finance. Secondly, the insurance industry. Another really big application for blockchain. The whole industry, insurance industry, is built on trust. Okay? Trust in the data. Blockchain can be made for managing all the types of information that the insurance companies need to verify. Identity, type of cover, premium amounts, and so on. Government is huge. They're really looking into blockchain. Many parts of the world, government can be quite bureaucratic, oftentimes seen as being quite corrupt. Blockchain offers a new way of increasing security, increasing efficiency, and transparency of government operations. If we look at some examples, the Dubai government, for example, is working with the company I work with, Consensus, to put all of their government information onto blockchain by 2020. So that's quite a big initiative. IBM is providing blockchain services to the Australian government. A little bit closer to home, the New South Wales government is looking at, in fact, I believe they have already implemented, if not a pilot program, are implementing driver's licenses on blockchain. So that's a real world application of blockchain happening now. Healthcare. Did somebody say my health record? All right. My health record is something that's really big in the news at the moment. For those of you who haven't opted out, you still have time. You can opt out at any time. But healthcare is a perfect solution or a perfect application for blockchain. All of the information that needs to be shared amongst doctors, hospitals, patients, insurance agencies, pathology labs, and so forth. Healthcare is tailor-made for blockchain. Supply chain. Supply chain management is a huge opportunity for blockchain. Ways of recording costs, labor, waste, emissions at all points in the supply chain. The ability to verify the authenticity or fair trade status of various products like chocolate and coffee and so on and so forth, being able to track them through every stage of production, right from the growing of the product through to production, through to wholesale, through to retail. Some interesting examples, wine fraud. I was at one of these presentations last year, and they were talking about wine fraud using blockchain to try and mitigate the risk against wine fraud, being able to track how the actual grapes, where they were grown, how they were grown, who they were sold to, the producers of the wine, tracking the transport of the wine and so forth, which is really quite interesting. A little bit closer to home here again, cane farms here in Queensland looking to put their production in blockchain to track the sustainability of their products. Voting is another application. Blockchain technology used for voter registration to identify, verify identity, vote counting. And there are many other examples that we've talked about: energy management, real estate, the retail industry, Internet of Things. Basically, any sort of industry that deals with data or transactions that we care about, and we want to make sure it's secure, is a candidate for blockchain. So, any questions? It's really come to the end of my talk, and I'm just going to do a quick wrap up, but it's relating to that. The lady asked the question, where is the data actually being stored for, is that correct? Yes. Okay, so the data is blockchain. Obviously, different applications will do it differently, but each participant in a blockchain network would store their own copy of the data locally. So each participant in the network would have their own copy of the data. Okay? Each application might store it differently in different formats, but they would have their own copy.
And they can never be
They could never be. Yes, that is correct. They will, again, getting into some more of the technical aspects of blockchain, but there's processes involved to make sure that all the participants in the network all have exactly the same copy of data, and that they're all in sync. Yeah, sir.
How about commodity trade, such as grains or metals?
Absolutely, absolutely. A very good friend of mine, she consults to the steel industry, for example. She sees blockchain as being a huge, huge innovation for the steel industry in terms of the production and the grading of steel and so on and so forth. There's other applications. There was another talk. A gentleman came here and spoke about talking about supply chain in the livestock industry, being able to track animals from the farm all the way through to production, and basically all the way from when the animal is born to when it ends up as a steak in Coles.
Is there examples like the London Metal Exchange or stock exchanges that are using this technology now?
I personally don't know of any, but I'm sure that there might be others.
Some diamond trading.
This gentleman says diamond trading. They're looking at putting blockchain, diamond trading information in blockchain.
What sort of trade?
Diamond
trading.
Right.
So again, because this is quite a new and evolving sort of technology, new technologies, these things, applications will be developed over time, and people will discover new ways using blockchain. Yes, sir.
So the gentleman that talked about the livestock, was that an actual existing system that they're using?
I can't recall if it's an existing system, but he was very specific about the things that are doing. But I couldn't tell you exactly what the name of the application was.
I follow up on that. As far as the $740 million contract, is that IBM worldwide?
No, that's IBM here in Australia. Yeah, I would shudder to think how much IBM might be charging sort of companies worldwide. I'm sure it's a lot more than $740 million.
I'm just interested in what is it? I guess what's the services provided?
Yeah, I think in the quote, there was air quotes around services.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just another application. What about intellectual property?
Absolutely, yes. The music industry. The music industry is, in fact, there are applications, there are existing applications on blockchain now to be able to track rights and royalties for songs and the music industry. So, similar sort of thing, maybe not quite intellectual property, but yeah, very similar.
Yeah, I'm thinking about military technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe you have to think of a prison agreement, but
Yeah.
it's another story.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So with the government trying to use this technology, how does it work differently to, for example, Bitcoin, which is people with money have an economic interest in kind of decentralized the government uses the blockchain? How are they decentralizing it, or are they just using like the hashing the hashing security stuff rather than having a security because government's not sure they are going to give it a copy of
but there are certain information where we want to have an ease of sharing of information, medical records, for example. There needs to be security, obviously, and authentication on who can access those records. But I know for myself, if I'm ever injured or in some sort of accident, I want my records available, my health records available to the appropriate levels of people. So there are some applications where blockchain is more appropriate than others, and government, they'll work out those applications as they see fit. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Can you just repeat the question a little bit louder? No, that's absolutely fine. I might just hand over very quickly to Peter, that he might have a better answer than I. Thank you.
I'll have a crack. So how I phrase, I think what we're saying is, so I think you're saying how does there connect between these keys, cryptography, and blockchain, and why is this better than, say, just whatever we've got at the moment? So I guess one of the things to think about is that when you're doing this signing stuff, you're all really saying, I'm going to do, say, a transaction which might get some sort of change to the state of that ledger, and you're saying, I am the one who's making this change. And so the lady to the right can't forge that because she can't sign, because she doesn't have your private key. So as far as your private key, public key, that's why that's important. The other thing that and the other thing that you get as well is with the ledger, it's distributed, and so everyone has a shared copy. So in this health record system, or in the supply chain, or in many other things, it's really who owns the data. And if you're not sure who's going to own the data, then maybe you say, well, you will all own the data. So I'll have a node, I don't trust you, you don't trust me, and we don't trust the other person in the organisation that needs to be part of this. So why don't all three of us own the data, and then we'll know that none of us can sort of hack the system and change the data because it's distributed. So when you're thinking through use cases, if you've got that sort of distributed data problem where you've got multiple parties who don't necessarily trust each other, then that's really good. And if you've also got a system where you want to have someone creating a transaction and you want to be able to say, well, you're the one who created it, so you're responsible for it, and then you have to trace who has done what. And a great example of this is the US Department of Defense. They had some problems with tracking, like munitions and knowing where stuff went. And so, I don't know, we've seen some reports, where surface-aware missile suddenly ends up in the wrong hands. How did it end up there? So if you've got all of your munitions in a system and someone has to authorise in that blockchain system that this surface-to-air missile goes from here to here, then someone has to be responsible. Someone has to sign for that. And so, then you don't have to which department within the DoD owns the database? Well, we're going to have a distributed database. And so for systems like that, it's really helpful because you can say who actually authorised it, and no one later on can go back and change the record because it's locked in, because of that blockchain.
Good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Oh, just my original question about the other
Yes.
media.
Yes.
What happens there when somebody dies and has one of those key?
It's that's a very difficult problem because once data is effectively encrypted using those public keys, private keys, if you forget your private key or you lose your private key, you're kind of out of luck.
Also, it's stuff.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of that story is because this gentleman has passed away with the knowledge of his private key in his head. It's gone.
So how do you get around that? Because at any moment, any one of us could pass away.
Yeah.
Well, ideally, you don't get around it. Ideally, you don't get around it. If you don't back up your data on your PC or your iPad, it's going to go away. If that hard drive crashes, you crash your device, right? So if I take my computer and I haven't made any backups, and I smash it into little bits, then I've lost my data, right? So if you've got a blockchain out there and you've got $1 million or $1 billion of cryptocurrency, and you choose not to provide some off-chain way of backing up access to your private key, shame on you, because you haven't done your backup. And you might secure that private key on a piece of paper in a safety deposit box in the bank, locked away in the dark, or you might do something in it, and if you just memorize the password, shame on you. You haven't protected your data and your access. If you're going to use an exchange, like this guy in Canada, wherever he was, right? And you're not protecting your data, you're trusting the exchange to protect your data. If the exchange does a bad job, you lose your data. And so there's a fair lack of money on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, where people have lost access to it because they didn't protect access to their private keys. That's by design. So don't do that. Just sorry, right?
No, that's
Somebody wrote to that was security vault. He gets that information. That's why the people
That's the trick. What happens when you put that money in the NAV and some white collar criminal in the NAV walks up?
Probably the concept of wallets is a message rather than saying
Yeah. Okay. I'm conscious of the time, so what I might do is very quickly wrap up. So just as a quick conclusion, just to reiterate some of the points, blockchain, remembering blockchain is the underlying technology for applications like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and indeed the applications that are built using Bitcoin and Ethereum. Existing technologies, combining them in new ways. Information is stored in blocks, which are then linked together to form a chain. We don't make updates in the middle of the chain, but instead we add new blocks to the chain to reflect the new data. It's decentralized, so we have copies of that blockchain are distributed across the participants in the network. This creates trust and cuts out those intermediaries that we have in traditional type systems. And cryptography, as I like to think of it, is the secret sauce for linking our blocks, for providing this consensus, and for providing data protection and authentication of our data. And industries right now are implementing blockchain. It's happening now. So, we have had a lot of questions already. Unless there's any other further questions, I wanted to skip to the next slide and talk a little bit about the upcoming meetup events that we do have. In 2 weeks' time, Adrian, here we are. He's going to give us a presentation on the Pantheon architecture, Pantheon being the Ethereum client that is being developed by my group, Pegasus. 2 weeks after that, we've got Brett Henderson, who will be talking about Ethereum 1.x, which is, I guess, going to be the precursor, if you like, to Ethereum 2.0. And then on the 20th of March, we have two gentlemen, Frederick Bryan and Richard Keenan. Is that still correct? Yeah. They'll be coming in to talk to us about how they are using Ethereum, what sort of applications they are developing using Ethereum. So that pretty much ends the presentation. Thank you all very much for coming along. It is an exciting new industry, and so I hope you've had some value from it. Thank you very much. And I have been told, if anybody wants any little